Hello everyone, so today we're going to be talking about the carbon cycle. So before we get into this map here, I want to talk about the term sink. So as you can see here, you may think sink, oh, this is where it accumulates, but no, not really actually. Sink is where carbon over a period of time accumulates here on Earth. And that's why in the past recent years we have seen a high rise of temperature, resulting in drastic climate changes. And such as like global warming and heating up our Earth. Over the years, a rise of carbon dioxide has went up to a top peak. And within this map here now that we can talk about, so we're going to be talking about how carbon goes around the Earth, the cycle. We're going to be talking about the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the lithosphere, soil, and the biosphere. All of these things consist of the travel of the carbon dioxide that goes out through our Earth. And what we want to do for this lesson today is we want to analyze how it's traveling and if we can come up with a solution to reduce it. Carbon cycle. We're now going to talk a little bit more on emphasis on the equations on how it transitions through the atmosphere to the biosphere.
That equation being 6 CO2 combined with 6 water molecules H2O to form sugars and oxygen, roughly 6 oxygen and 1 glucose molecule.
And this transfer goes from the top of the atmosphere all the way to the biosphere. Now that when we talk about the biosphere, what we mean is that the biosphere consists of living organisms, like I said before. And if we look into further emphasis, we see that there are some species on the ground. And if we were to look further into how they would produce carbon dioxide, well, that's pretty easy. So let's say a human or a deer that wants to eat something. Let's say this goes nearby this. Goes nearby this tree here. If it goes nearby this tree and eats some berries, well, actually, the tree is actually producing carbon dioxide. It's actually taking carbon dioxide, producing oxygen and glucose. And when the human or the deer eats it, it comes out to carbon dioxide again with its waste, goes down to the soil, and the carbon dioxide goes back up again. So there is a continuous cycle. We breathe the carbon dioxide out, the tree takes oxygen, carbon dioxide comes back right out with sugar, provides nutrients to the species around it. Now, when we're going to talk about from the atmosphere to the hydrosphere, we talk about the living aquatic species that live within the water. The living species here, like say the fish. When CO2 comes down, there's also oxygen in sea level. They also breathe out carbon dioxide, which dissolves in the ocean and over time comes out, and it also mixes up with the hydrosphere itself.
Carbon moves from the atmosphere to the hydrosphere is actually a series of diffusion, which is a completely complicated equation that is way too much to write down. But through that same process, carbon is being put back into the atmosphere, and while carbon is right there, it can take 4 different states. It can remain in its gaseous form, either form carbonates or a bicarbonate, or enter an equilibrium with carbon with the water and to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is obviously leading to the intensity of the acidity in the oceans, which makes it harder for sea creatures such as clams, oysters, coral to form their limbs and shells. And some forms of sea life can actually morph the bicarbonate and combine it with calcium and form calcium bicarbonate, which the aforementioned oysters, clams, coral can use to form their shells or hard body parts. And when these organisms die, their limbs and shells float down to the bottom of the ocean and form calcium-rich deposits where after millions of years their chemical and physical properties would change. And through its own process through the rock cycle will enter the lithosphere, and that sedimentary rock form will enter the carbon cycle in turn.
So after taking a look at the lithosphere, biosphere, and the hydrosphere, let's now take a look at the atmosphere. So like I said before, over the years, carbon dioxide starts to accumulate, what we call as sinks. And when the carbon dioxide starts accumulating up, it starts to eventually, over the years, move all the way up to our atmosphere. And what that does, and what we call now is called greenhouse gases, is where carbon dioxide starts building up to a large amount, almost like a cloud. You won't see it, but trust me, it's there. What actually happens is that when the sun rays hit the greenhouse gases, it actually starts to emit heat and energy down back to the biosphere. And what that actually happens is there's two effects, what we call now is global warming, is that number one, it creates high temperatures, very, very high temperatures. And two, it raises sea levels. So with all of that heat, it actually targets the poles, the North Pole, and the glaciers, and starts melting them, causing that rise. So carbon dioxide is literally everywhere in the atmosphere. That's where it's the storage space for carbon dioxide. All of the pollutants that we're doing, the emissions, that's where it's all going. Thank you all for watching, and I really hope that this video helped you to understand the carbon cycle here on Earth. Ciao!